Small Acre Hunting's 2018 Embrace the Journey is brought to you in partnership with Real World Wildlife Products, Radix Trail Cameras, and Treehopper LLC.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Ty down here, and I wanted to start this episode of The Journey. I guess is what I'm calling it this year. It's basically just taking you throughout my year. Some of the things that I'm going to add to these may not seem beneficial to some of you, but hopefully you can kind of see the steps and process that we go through, which in the end I think is what a lot of us can relate to. I wanted to apologize first and foremost that it's been so long since I've gotten you content. And I'm going to start this off by even apologizing the fact that a lot of what you're going to see in this episode actually took place now as far back as a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, for one little shot of it. My life's been crazy busy, and hopefully this just shows you guys that I am just your normal average Joe guy. This isn't a big sponsorship program. This isn't something that, I make money on or anything like that. I like to just share my experiences with others and see where the Lord takes this. So, but first and foremost, thank you so much for checking this out. Thank you so much for everybody that's been emailing me. Some of you guys have been wondering, when's the next episode? When are we going to get updates? Things of that nature. I'm going to try really hard to not let this much time elapse in the future and do a few more quick whitetail minutes, which you're actually going to see the whitetail minutes for the Radix MT100 here very soon. It'll hopefully be up by the end of this week, which today is the 15th, so give me until the 21st is Saturday, and hopefully this bad boy in its 5 minute or less whitetail minute video will be up. We'll discuss that camera like I did some of the past offerings by Radix. But let's delve right into this episode where the first video I'm going to take you out while I go out and do some Miscanthus gigantus replanting and do a little bit of discussions there. Then I'm going to take you to a very interesting spot where I located a bed that I actually believe might have been one of the beds that Bertier was using. If it wasn't him, I'm pretty sure I know which buck it was, but I'm going to kind of hold off on that. If I can confirm that this year, that'll be a special little update for you guys. He's an awesome buck that's growing this year. I passed him a couple times last year, but he's going to be pretty special, and he might be a really hard pass. But this bed is actually located inside the bush honeysuckle, which I've talked to you guys is not something that anybody should encourage on their property. Long term, I'm going to eradicate it, and I've spoke on that in past episodes of The Journey. Go ahead and check those out, where I talk about some of my issues with bush honeysuckle and how we should try to eradicate them, but I'm trying to control it at this point, and then I'm going to slowly keep kind of sculpting that bedding area out and removing it, and eventually long term hope to not have any. It does serve a purpose. It kind of creates an area that's only good for bedding. It's not a good food source, it's not a good anything else, but I can sculpt it into a decent bedding area right now, and the deer love bedding in it just off that Clover fruit plot where I actually shot Splits, the buck right here in front of the camera. And once you're done with those two parts, we're going to talk about, to end this episode, we're going to talk about, some guys have wondered and asked, Ty, how are you getting such good clover plots? I always seem to struggle with weeds or issues of things of that nature. We're going to delve into my thoughts on clover plots and what my recommendation is to you to not only get them started, but also keep them thriving, and what is to be considered a lush, good, successful clover plot. My answer to that might surprise a few of you. But if you've been following me long enough, you probably kind of know what direction that's going. But let's hold off. We'll talk about that when we get back. So go ahead and watch the next couple video visits of the Miscanthus planting, as well as that bedside visit. Hey guys, so it is a little bit past mid-May. I think today's the 20th, if I remember right. But we're here at the new 22. Had kind of a late start to the day. Did some other stuff. And while I don't like short visits to the property, I needed to get some cameras set up for all the spring growth that's going to start happening with the antlers. Get the first checks here in about a month or two. We'll really start to be able to see what each buck's going to be, and maybe even figure out who's survived and who hasn't. But one of the things I'm doing today involves this bad boy. This is the linesman's belt. I grabbed mine, for anybody wondering, from Treehopper LLC. If you look them up, you can order from them. Great guy, great company. a small business company based out of Wisconsin. But there's a big discussion every now and then. You'll see it on forums, Facebook, things of that nature. The argument over, do you leave tree stands up year round? I'm kind of split on it, depending on your land, depending on your property. I recommend pulling the sticks at least. Sometimes it's tough to not leave the stand up at least a year. No matter what, I live by the motto, each stand has 2 ratchet straps, and one of those needs to be new every year. And I prefer the top one to be the brand new one. One slightly lower is usually last year's, and I just cycle through. I'll use the 3-year-old straps sometimes for the base. I use a lot of the interlocking steps that go up, so I'll use the 3-year-old straps maybe on the middle sections and have a really good one on the bottom, real good one on the top. Basically, if you have the bottom and the top secure, the middle ones aren't quite as needed. They just need to be able to hold everything snug to the tree. But gonna be loosening up all the straps on all the stands, whether they're staying or not. This time of the year is when the trees start to swell and grow, and if you're not careful, you have everything tightened down via the fall, and now you're gonna start putting a lot of stress on not only the stand, but one thing we all need to be conscious of is that actually squeezes the cambium layer, and it's like slowly strangling a tree if you think about it. So I want all the trees that my stands are in to be able to flourish and grow, especially this young oak tree that's up here at the fruit plot. You know, I want that tree to keep growing. It's a great stand location, and as it gets bigger, I'll be able to finally elevate and get the stand up a little higher. I'm gonna try to creep another 1 or 2 up that spot this next year. I just felt like I was just a little too low. Can't go real high because the tree's not that big. It's one of the smaller trees that I'm in. But gonna be doing that today. Gonna check on the clover. It's now been about a week and a half, 2 weeks since I sprayed the clethodim. Should be able to see how the results of that are. The clover that I frost seeded here where we park is coming up good. Yeah, there's a lot of grass and weed growth in here, but there's a lot of clover popping up too, so I'm gonna count that as a success. Also, another great thing is I brought the little shovel today because Don over at Maple River Farms actually saw the video I posted to Facebook, and he couldn't replace the clusters because the clusters are, you know, more expensive and they sell out of them real quick. But he said, hey Ty, we'll gladly assist you and get you some new rhizomes. He was gonna do it for free, guys, and I recommend don't ever take advantage of a small business like that. It wasn't his fault, it's Mother Nature. It's something that you risk, but I found it extremely awesome and courteous that Don was willing to do that. It just goes to show the type of man behind the business and the business itself. So if you're watching this video and you need Miscanthus giganteus in the future, contact Don and the people at Maple River Farms in Michigan. They've earned my business for life now. So I did get some rhizomes. I did not let him give them to me for free, but I got some rhizomes today to try to replace some of those clusters that we lost. I got I haven't even opened up the box. I don't even remember how many he said he would ship, but got those today, so they're still in the box. I need to start walking around. We're gonna go take a status check of the rhizome clusters that lived, or the rhizomes that lived back in that pocket that we planted them in, and if a lot of them lived, I'm gonna use these elsewhere. If not, we're gonna shove them in the ground back there. And that's what we got going on today. So let's hit the woods, and I don't want to be here really long, and I'm gonna let my presence be known. Fawns could be dropping. We could have fawns back here in this thick stuff, so gonna be really cautious. See one, I'm just gonna back out, and we'll go from there.
So coming back here, like this one right here, there's 3 shoots, but they've all been bit off the top of them. Hopefully they can survive that. And there's a really good cluster back behind the camera I just noticed that lived, and it's sending probably 9 or 12 shoots up out of the ground. That's not even a joke. So while we lost a decent amount, a few of them have lived. There's 2 shoots over here that are pretty good size that are already up about about 12 inches. These would be if they hadn't been bit off. There's a couple back where I entered too. I'm gonna keep checking them out, walk around, and then we'll open up these rhizomes and get them in the ground. Let me show you this one really good one. I may have overshot a little bit with saying there was as many as I did, but there's for sure 1, 2, 3, 4, a fifth right there, 6, 7, 8. So we've got 8 coming out of this one spot right here, and they're all surviving, all living, and hopefully those things will keep going, and we'll have about 8 shoots right here that'll get to about 6 to 8 feet this year in this first year most likely. I'm hoping I find a couple more like this that lived, because that'd be amazing. All right, so walking around, I actually found some spots that even a few of them that I think I replanted, they're trying to grow. I found a cluster I replanted that sent up 1 shoot. Hopefully that shoot lives. There are pockets where they're growing, you know, better than I thought after walking around and finding all of them dug up last time, or a really high percentage of them. So yeah, I think it's gonna end up slightly better as long as they don't keep eating them, but the more and more spring that comes and hits and more stuff growing, the less likely whatever's eating them is going to have to target them, because there's so much other green stuff growing. So we've got 50 rhizomes in here, and as always, there's instructions for the best way to get them in the ground. We did treat this. There's more growth in here than I'd like right now for competition, but there's nothing that I can do about that at this point. It is a grass, so you can treat it with selective herbicide for like broadleaf competition. And yeah, so I'm gonna get these puppies in the ground. Yet again, good sized rhizomes. It's unbelievable the quality that Maple River has in their rhizomes. I mean, some of these are the size of clusters, so I'm gonna work on getting these bad boys in the ground, because it's gonna rain tomorrow. It's a good day to do this. Hey guys, so we're at the new 22 still, and I've got probably about maybe 10 or 12 Miscanthus gigantus rhizomes, and I came out of the bedding area and I'm going to experiment to see how these things do out here in this fallow dirt track. You can kind of see on past this young oak tree right there, that's about 30 yards away. On that direction, my property line runs just kind of right of the camera. This pear tree behind me that you can see right behind me, a good sized one, that's still on my property, and it kind of shoots down. So I own about maybe a 30-foot wide, maybe a little bit wider stretch of this dirt track, and then the fence lines here, and then the fruit plots on the other side. Eventually, as I do more and more work here, I can't always assume that the dirt track to my west is always going to be vacant. He is vacant. He is trying to sell the 4.5 acres that he owns right here by the road. And if, you know, if somebody ever buys it, puts up a small industrial building or more storage units or something like that, I'm gonna want to have some kind of sight blocking for people that they can't see me. And also, deer bed inside this stuff sometimes, and I eventually want to try to have a chute of cover that runs down here, because I enter down there, or I actually enter from to the south a little bit, but I want to be able to make a little bit of a corridor here that's blocked and still on my property, to where it's too tight and the cover will be too linear for the deer to use it for bedding most likely. I'll discourage bedding along here by hinge cutting low and making it to where, unless they're gonna bed right out in the open, they're not gonna bed in here, to where I'll be able to walk here. Deer can't see me from this side of things. The only bad thing is, most likely if I'm walking here, it's because the wind's in my favor accessing this stand, which means it's probably gonna blow out into this stuff. But the good thing is, if I only trip a deer's hearing or a deer's nose, but not their sight, the chances of them absolutely just blowing out of the area is a lot less. I expect they'll circle up and around either direction, and they'll go into the bedding areas either on my property or on and around it, and not completely blow out of the area, because they're used to human scent going throughout the air here because of kind of the urban type setting that we have. What they're not used to is coming across ground scent or seeing people where they're not used to seeing them. You know, looking out from their beds and looking over into behind a yard, yeah, they expect to see human beings, but you know, if they don't like seeing them where they're not used to them. So I'm gonna try to get some Miscanthus growing right here to start a shoot going down through here, see how it does. If it does really good, we'll order more next year with this place in mind, and we'll finish the rest of this entire stretch. And in 2 or 3 years, I'll have a good site blocking line that was actually pretty cheap and affordable, and it's permanent. You know, I could come in here, till this up, disc it up, and put sorghum or something like that. That's a lot of work, a lot of energy. This is just shoving rhizomes in the ground. And if they take and they grow, they're really hard to kill, they're really hardy, they will outcompete nearly everything else after they're established. And I've got a screening, so I'm gonna get these in the ground. Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me. Let me get this little bush honeysuckle out of the way. This is that area that I brush hogged, or not brush hogged, sorry. This is that area of bush honeysuckle that you saw me last March come in here, take a chainsaw and cut a bunch of arteries throughout it to hopefully encourage use and to get exactly what I found here. This is an area where leaves have been pushed aside over the time. You can tell this bed was used the entire last year, and there's hair still in it right now, fresh hair on the ground and throughout. This is a little bit of a high ground, and then the pond's literally 10 feet behind me. So there's a couple other possible bed locations depending on the wind or possibly the sun. Certain times of the day this one might get shade, and then later in the day they might get up and move over there. This slightly high ground, the location of this, I actually suspect this might be Bertier or that 8-pointer that I always saw coming in and out of here. Where I got a lot of the pictures, exiting and entering is about 30 yards that way. And this is a corridor. They can keep an eye, scent check any doe that goes on that food plot without having to break cover. It makes a whole lot of sense that I found this bed right here. And this is why we do what we do. This is why, despite the fact that I don't like bush honeysuckle, like you can see here, it becomes extremely thick, and you got to come in, cut a bunch of arteries. It'll spread and take over an area, so you got to really control it. If you're not going to eradicate it, you got to control it. This whole area eventually long term will not be in bush honeysuckle. I'm going to come in here periodically and just cut a bunch of them out. They do make really nice bedding areas like this where they create little understories that's clear of debris, and the deer really like bedding underneath them. But if you don't keep an eye on them, they will spread and take over your property. But this is an awesome, awesome bed right here. It's just, this is why I get so excited when I see deer utilize what I'm doing. And as a matter of fact, that's actually why we do what we do. That's why those of you out there are watching this channel. It's because you've become addicted. And I tell you what, the first time you see a deer walk out and use a new food plot, there's something inside of you that just, it's the highlight of that moment, that day, that year sometimes. To see the deer utilize the trail that you cut, entering and exiting. To shoot a buck over a scrape that you created. To shoot a deer eating an apple tree that fell out of an apple tree you planted 4 years prior. There is a story that's being told, and that's why we do what we do. That's why I'm addicted to this, and that's why hopefully you tune in every time I post something, hoping to see something else, maybe see my success, encourage your success. And guys, you can do this on small properties. It doesn't matter what size property you have, you can make it the best by doing every single thing that you can. This is just one example. Created this bedding option and they took it over and they used it a lot. I mean, there's literally no debris right here. The cool ground's underneath them. This is awesome.
All right, so that bedding video that I just showed you guys that you just watched, I'm going to be honest with you, that's one of the best beds that I've found that I didn't really make. And it made a lot of sense once I kind of got in there. It's on a little bit of a knoll, so he's actually overlooking that bedding area. It's only a few feet, but imagine if you're a buck bedding in there, you're underneath the autumn olive canopy, but yet you can look out throughout that bedding area, and anything moving in that cover, that buck is either going to smell, hear, and most likely see, especially during the fall months when he's trying to find a lucky lady, or he's trying to get lucky with a lady, if you will. But it was just an awesome example of how that area 2 years ago was so thick that the deer weren't even utilizing it much. And if you remember, I went back there last March before the 2017 season, after the 2016 season, and I just chainsawed a trail throughout there and multiple trails. I made one main kind of parallel with the food plot, the clover plot, which we're going to talk about the clover here in a second, to try to incorporate a north-south travel that they would be encouraged to utilize. But also I made tons of arteries and openings inside that autumn olive, cutting some autumn olive bushes out completely, some trimming tremendously. So there's still that overhead canopy, but yet it's open down below and they can utilize that bedding area, and they truly did this last year. And I saw some amazing rutting action and just utilization of that bedding area from the time spring green up happened all the way till now. Deer are still coming out of there every single day on trail cameras hitting that clover plot. But that's what I want to talk to you guys about now. Let's talk about clover. It's one of the main things that everybody wants to incorporate on their property. And I'm not anti-clover. I actually think clover should be incorporated into every single land habitat manipulation out there. You should have some kind of clover or alfalfa on your property. And the reason why I say that is it's very drought tolerant resistant a lot of times. It'll stay green longer than a lot of things, but its window of delivery of good, high, dense nutrient food source, if you will, is much longer than almost anything else that you can plant. Pretty much from spring green, when clover starts growing, it'll feed deer all the way through until the hunting season, in the hunting season, and then certain types of clover will continue on to be green if you dig down through the snow. And those deer will do that, especially if there's no other good food source. So you've basically got something that'll feed deer about at least arguably 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, some even argue even longer. So it's something that I truly believe you should have on your property because of the long-term delivery of food that it does. And to be honest with you, it's not extremely high maintenance. It can be if you're one of those guys that thinks that your clover plot has to be pristine. So I hate to burst your bubble right now, but the one thing you'll learn from me is I'm not anti-weed. I'm not, especially not broadleaf. A lot of grasses out there, the deer aren't going to eat. Johnson grass, Sudan grass, things of that nature. The things that we deal with, crabgrass, ryegrass, hopefully not, because that stuff just spreads like wildfire. But most of your grasses in your clover plot is really the only thing I'm worried about. If I've got broadleaf stuff, thistles and stuff, I'll spot spray them. But if I've got ragweed or goldenrod or things like that just coming up in my clover plot, I'm really not worried about it. I'm going to let them grow. When I do my mowings during the year, that'll pretty much control the broadleaves, and by year 2, there's not going to be many of them out there unless I let them go to seed, and I'm just left with clover and then trying to control the grasses. So the first bit of advice I guess I would say is when you're trying to establish a clover plot, don't just plant clover. That might sound a little counterintuitive, but think on it for a second. One, I always like to incorporate chicory in with my clover. Chicory has become this magnet to the deer, it seems like, during a window of time from October 1st till November 15th. There's like a 2-week window that I haven't been able to peg down due to weather, I don't know for sure, but it's like all the clover just gets hammered on my property and it's gone. You literally cannot. Once the rut hits, I can't video up in my stand where I shot splits, overlooking that clover plot. I can't find a blade of chicory longer than an inch tall. They don't exist. It's like that just something tripped in those deer, and that became the targeted food source until it was gone. So that's one thing. But secondly, the reason why I say that is if you're planting in the fall, establishing a clover plot in the fall, I highly encourage you plant cereal grains with it. And I like cereal rye or cereal wheat. I don't necessarily like oats. And the reason being is why I'm planting that is to act as a nurse crop, not necessarily for the fall, although it will, because as the rye pops and the wheat pops, especially the rye pops really quick, germinates fast. The deer like those tender blades of rye. They like tender blades of oats. I mean, you can throw oats in with it, but really try to make sure you have rye and wheat because of the next year. So it's acting as a nurse crop in the fall, but it's also going to act as a nurse crop for the clover to really start to show its full potential, because it's not going to do much in the fall. The next spring is when your clover's really going to pop. And as everything spring greens up, in my plots the first year, in that first spring, my rye is some of the first stuff to start growing after the winter, and then the wheat, and then the clover starts growing. So that rye is already a couple inches tall before the clover's starting to pop and really start to take hold. And then by the time the rye is, a foot tall, gets up into that 2-foot range, it may even be taller and it's starting to die. You can either let it go to head and then mow, or you can mow it before. There's really not a perfect way to do it. If you're going to be spraying for grasses, it will kill anything that regerms anyways. But I like to wait until the clover is in the understory, and when you're walking, you can see it underneath the rye and the wheat that has regermed back up that spring. Mow it, and that rye is actually going to help. If you research rye, it'll actually inhibit some weed growth and competition to allow the clover to really take hold as well. So that's just that's my preferred method of if I'm going to do it in the fall. Another way to do it is with frost seeding, and I'll be honest, I frost seed over my clover plots at least every other year, even into existing plots. The reason being, it helps thicken them back up. It actually, some of the spots that I may have had a lot of weeds the previous year, or maybe had a lot of grass clumps or a lot of thick grass, and I used clethodim on it to kill and target just the grass. I then had a bare spot left over. You can frost seed clover, and it does extremely well. I had some trails I cut last year that were down to bare dirt. I just killed them off with gly, so they were dead going into the winter. A lot of exposed dirt. Went out there in March of this year, sowed a bunch of clover in, and I mean, things are just popping up. There's a trail that's actually to the south of where we pull in, and you're actually seeing some footage of it now. That section I've kept brush hogged the last 2 years. It has never really grown up much because I've kept it mowed down. I want to encourage a little bit of growth. I wanted to plant some switchgrass in there, so I was kind of keeping it low so we could terminate it really easy. Well, I went in there and I tossed a whole bunch of frost-seeded clover in there, just hoping that it would outcompete the other stuff. And then I went in there and sprayed it with clethodim as well this year, and that clover is really starting to take over. It's that easy, guys. I didn't do anything. I haven't fertilized that, although I probably will. I need to hit it with some phosphorus. Actually, I need to do a soil test there first of all, but I'm not going to need nitrogen because clover's a legume. It's gonna create its own nitrogen, or fix its own nitrogen, as they say. But just an example of how easy it was to get that plot going. But again, any broadleaf type stuff that's growing with my clover, I'm not worried about it. I'm not concerned. My plots don't need to look pristine. But that's what I like to do for clover plots. And then my maintenance really is just mowing high with a brush hog. Or if you don't have a brush hog and you got to push mow or even ride your lawnmower over it, set them as high as you possibly can. And if it's not very high, say you only can cut maybe 3 or 4 inches high, try to do it before rain, or even like the day of rain. Be ending right as the rain starts. Because what that's going to do, if you cut it really short, yeah, you're going to shock that clover. And if it has to deal with a drought shock as well as the cutting shock, it's not going to do as well. It's not going to thrive. So if you cut it really short and then it rains, it's going to take that stress away from it, and that clover's still going to do very well. I actually need to get out and cut my clover for the second time out in that section. I was out there earlier and cut it. I had clover that was up to my knees at least, and I probably already do as well. Going to spot spray some more clethodim out there for the competing grasses, but I'm not going to worry about the rest of it. It's all looking pretty darn good. and I'm going to burrow out a section this year, and I'll take you guys along where I'm going to plant some chicory as well, and just try to do like an 80% chicory, 20% clover, where a lot of the mixes out there focus more on clover but not the chicory. So we're gonna give that a go, and I'm gonna take you guys along. I've actually got some chicory seed here. I just wanted some pure chicory seed, so I ordered this from Hancock. It's just an online distributor of high quality seed. It doesn't mean I'm using anything other than that. I'm all real world. I do believe in real world through and through, but I wanted just chicory as an experiment, and we'll see how it goes, and I'll keep reporting back to you guys. But I think that's all I've got for this episode. Apologies for it being a little bit longer than normal, but I really wanted to start tackling at the end of these videos at least one thing that I keep getting asked about in emails or such. So if you have something you want to hear my thoughts on, if you want to hear why I chose a certain tree stand, if you want to hear the story of a buck that you haven't heard, or what I attribute a success to killing one of these bucks, or anything and everything, tree stand placement, what I would do in your shoes, you know, anything and everything, you guys have done well. I've got a couple options coming up because I keep getting emails on certain things. So, but I'm always looking for more topics, so hit me up. As always, like and share this video, guys. It means a lot. The bigger the audience grows, the more stuff I can give to you guys, and hopefully maybe I can start getting some sponsors, pump a little bit more money into this, and deliver even higher quality stuff, and hopefully some giveaways for you awesome people out there that follow me. As always, God bless, and good luck out there, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Embrace the Journey, the 2018 season here at Small Acre Hunting. Click that subscribe button, like and share this video on all social media platforms, and be sure to follow me at Small Acre Hunting on Facebook or via the website www.smallacrehunting.com. And as always, guys, God bless and good luck out there.